Hey everybody, and welcome to a Tatter-a-fact here at the Girlz Ink studio in Las Vegas. And we've got a hot one for you today. And I'm not just talking about the 110-degree sunny Las Vegas Valley weather. I'm talking about Katie Schofield from the UK, and we are going to be talking all about pigments. Hey Katie, welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I'm super stoked to have you.
I'm excited to be here.
I know. How's the weather in the UK? Are you guys like super hot or?
Absolutely dreadful today. Cold, rainy, and I'm jealous.
I don't know if you'd be jealous of 110, 112 degrees. I mean, we do have air conditioning and they do say it's a dry heat, but you know, dry heat, schmy heat. I mean, 110 is 110. Do you know?
Yeah, I'd swap it just for a couple of days.
I think we'd take you up on that swap for a couple of days. Hey, well, I'm super stoked to have you here. We're going to be talking about pigments. You and I, you know, we had, I think how a lot of artists meet and get to know each other and build a rapport is a social media rapport. You started kind of following me on Instagram and we just kind of started commenting on each other and following each other and getting a vibe for each other. And I totally dug you like on Instagram and your social media vibe. And then we finally got to meet at the AAM conference. And it like you were everything and beyond. Like instantly, I liked you. Instantly, you're my kind of people, right? It was super cool.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, we had fun.
Yeah, that was a really fun conference, and it was great to meet you. And I almost didn't recognize you because you had shaved your head. And I was used to.
You didn't recognize me until I posted.
No,
I posted a picture. Like, oh.
So I almost didn't recognize you. Because on Instagram you had like a lot of hair and it was purple, and that was my image of you, like you're like right. And then I get to the AAM and you're blonde and you're shaved your head.
Totally bald. Totally bald. You had no idea who I was.
Yeah, but you were a sexy bald. Like you can pull off bald.
Well, now it's a Mohican.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. Not everybody can wear bald and look hot. But you did it quite well. You did it quite well. So, hey, Katie, how long have you been doing permanent makeup?
Since about 2016. I've been in the beauty industry for about 15 years and then wanted to specialize in eyebrows particularly. So I trained in 2016 and yeah, that's what I've been doing ever since.
You've been rock and rolling ever since. So is eyebrows the only procedure that you still do, or did you venture out into other procedures?
Yeah, I ventured out into eyeliner, lips, and areola pretty quickly, actually.
Cool. So do you have a favorite procedure?
Always brows. I mean, I love the others. I love the others. But brows, because they're so transformative.
Yeah.
You know, some of those brows, they look like a different person.
Yeah, 100%. For me, I think it's like between brows and eyeliner. Like I go back and forth. Like if I'm doing brows that day, then brows are my favorite. But if I'm doing eyeliner that day, then it's like eyeliner. I think they're like really super close for me. I think I love both those procedures. So what you got really interested in pigments, you know, and I did too. Early on in my career, especially when I started, using Li Pigments, because I had some bad experiences with pigments before I discovered Li. And once I started using Li, like my aging got better, you know, my brows aged better, super stable. I didn't have any off colors. And that like triggered like something in me. I wanted to learn why I was having problems. You know, what was it about the other lines and what was it about Li? What makes a pigment, you know, age well? What makes a pigment age not so well? Is it mostly is that responsibility mostly on the manufacturer? Is it the quality of the pigment? Is there equal responsibility on the technician in the way we're implanting or modifying? So I got really, really super involved in the science of pigments as well. And I know you have. What sparked your interest? What got you so nerdy that you wanted to really learn and understand and educate on pigments?
Just like you, I wanted to understand it. And I think partially I am a massive nerd, and just somebody telling me that something is a fact isn't good enough. I need to know why.
Yeah.
Why is it good for that?
Right.
And also just wanting to be the best technician that I can long term, truly caring about my clients and about their long-term results. Also not wanting to have a stressful life. I don't want things coming back in the door that are going to make me stress years down the line.
Yeah, no, I can relate. That was, I almost got out of permanent makeup because all my brows, or the majority of them, when I would go get them from the lobby in a couple of years, they were just different colors. And that wasn't happening to me in body tattooing. In body tattooing, it was just a lot more straightforward. And you didn't have to deal with colors completely turning another color. Yes, body tattoo pigments fade out. A red might end up looking more, pink over a bunch of years. But red didn't turn purple. It wasn't like the eyebrows. I mean, you can put in a beautiful brown, it heals a beautiful brown, and then in a year, it can just be this god-awful, completely different, funky color you didn't expect, and it would embarrass me. I didn't know, I was too young in my career, and I didn't know enough about pigments. I didn't know what to say, and I think I got to a point where I was always blaming their skin. Well, it must be your skin. It must be something you're doing, which, wasn't, probably the right approach, but I didn't know what the hell was going on. And I almost got out of permanent makeup because, like you said, it was just so stressful on me. It was embarrassing and humiliating, and I couldn't handle it. And then one day, someone sent me a bottle of Li Pigments hazelnut. That was the very first Li pigment I ever used, hazelnut. And that was the only Li pigment color I used for about a year. And I started doing a lot of things with hazelnut, a lot of clients with hazelnut. And I'd, watch it, and just started incorporating other colors from Li into my line. And it took me about 6 years to get completely onto Li. And it took me about 6 years to trust Li. It wasn't a quick switch and I instantly trusted them. It was, I went in very guarded. I went into the Li pigment range skeptical and walls up, not trusting, and to my surprise, it was a completely different experience, and then the rest is history. So what was it like? What was your journey to Li? Did you kind of go through the similar kind of thing?
Totally the same. Absolutely the same. Getting brows back where I'm like, how do I deal with that? And again, being unhappy with the colors that they turned. And just as a newer artist anyway, you're looking for that holy grail. What's the best pigment? What's the best pigment out there? And I was hearing a lot of good things about Monica Ivani. But again, I like to sit back and watch. I don't want to just jump on something. I want to see it, down the line, healed and aged. And I was just seeing constant good results from them. So I thought I'll try those. Loved them. They were coming back great to me. And that's when I just sort of went fully into the Li line. And I just don't waver from it because the results that I get back now are just so predictable.
Yeah, no, agree. And I think, and most people that use Li do have that experience. But Li got, because Li still is the most most exposed, or iron oxide. Well, nowadays the artists are calling them mineral pigments, right? It's like this new terminology. It's not new to chemists, right? Like Mattia, the chemists at LI, always for years have referred to them as mineral pigments or, inorganics. But the industry kind of always called them iron oxides. But now I see a shift. Now we're starting to refer to them as inorganics and mineral pigments. But there is this myth that iron oxides age red. And I wanted to ask you, like, what are your thoughts and what are your comments and what's your experience with that?
I think we've got to say there are red brows out there, and I've seen orange, I've seen pink, but I've not seen it with Li. I don't think it is that inorganics turn pink. Some pigment lines may turn pink, red, orange, but I've not experienced that. And I think there's other factors to do with implantation, to do with modifying, perhaps modifying too much. There was a tendency for a lot of people to use a lot of modifiers. I just haven't seen it with Li. I'm not getting red or even particular swings of warmth coming back.
Yeah, no, you know what? I never have. I can't say never. Once in a blue moon, I would get a client, back, 2 or 3 years, and maybe there's some slight warmth. I've even seen some slight ashiness, but this myth that iron oxides, go red. I think that is a big myth that a lot of us are working to dispel and bring some truth to, and re-educate on. I think Li, 100% Li got a really bad reputation years ago when, we never had no reds, no warm returns ever in 20 years. We had such a great track record, right, with Li, and then microblading hit the scene. And then I think to overcompensate for bad microblading training, because everybody became a trainer after 6 months of learning microblading. So to overcompensate for bad microblading training, a lot of trainers were telling, their students, put a bunch of orange in every single color in every single pigment cap for every single client. And then all of a sudden, we're seeing all these orange fades and warm returns with Li, and Li took the heat for that, right? The trainers did not want to take responsibility for that. So Li, took the responsibility for that, took the hit for that, and it was really sad to see. Now we know better, and we know what caused that, and it was over modifying. So yeah, I think I agree with you 100%. It's also a technique. I think if you're in the skin too long, Katie, and when you're new and you're starting out, especially if you're new and starting out with a smaller needle, you can be in that skin too long, and which is normal. I'm not saying that's necessarily a bad thing. We all go through that. That's part of the learning process. Right? But when you're in that skin too long, if you're spending 3 or 4 hours back and forth, with a smaller needle, you're causing scar tissue. Scar tissue on fits 1, 2, 3, and even 4s is red and pink. So on top of that, the fact that they're going shallow, that pigment is falling out and leaving the skin before that red and pink scar tissue has time to heal away and go back to normal skin tone. That can take a year or 2 on some people. So I think a lot of the red and pink artists are seeing it's not even pigment, it's scar tissue. What are your thoughts on that?
Absolutely. And I don't think that people necessarily are taking responsibility for some of the colors that are healing. I inherited a lot of local artists' work. She stopped doing it, and I kept seeing the same eyebrows, and they had a look of being purple, but when you looked close, they were sort of blue splodgy strokes and red in between. And I thought, well, she's not using different pigment between. Right. It's just not implanted properly. So that the overall look was purple, but there was actually red and blue from the same pigment, which will absolutely be about implantation.
Yeah. You want to hear something interesting? I was talking to one of my artists yesterday, and all my new artists that come in, I'll tattoo them with a dry needle. And I'll tattoo them like a big circle, like the size of a nickel. And I go proper depth, and then I have them tattoo right next to it. So they can get the feel of depth, right? Like they need to feel like me. And one of my artists, her name's Amy. And do you know, like that really clicked for her because there was no pigment on that needle. But do you know, over a year later, that circle that I tattooed, that she tattooed, was still pink. Still pink. And that's just her skin type. She was like, if I scratch myself and I get a scab, when the scab goes away, it can take like 6 months just for a light scratch for that pink to go away. But the tattooing area that we did, it was well over a year and it was still pink. And there was zero pigment on the needle. So it's just, it's post-traumatic scar tissue just from the needle being in the skin. So I agree with you. I think like iron oxides, mineral pigments, whatever you call them, have got a really bad reputation when it's undeserving.
Yeah, agreed. There's so many other factors go into it. And so I think that you can't always, you don't know how people are implanting it to be able to judge what those results are going to be coming back.
Yeah, 100%. So why do you think it's important, or do you think it's important for artists to know like what's in their pigments?
Absolutely. I think if you want to predict the short and long-term heal of your results, you need to know what you're putting into people's faces. And you'll see on forums all the time that people are using pigments and they have no idea whether they're inorganic, organic, highly pigmented. And then if you're using sort of, large needles and pumping pigment into people's skin, you're not going to know how that's going to turn out. So I think it's really, really important.
Yeah, 100%. 'Cause you're right. There's so many different needles. There's the single needle, and that's a whole different technique that implants pigment very uniquely. It heals pigment very uniquely. I think pigment fades very uniquely with a single needle. Then you have like the liners, like 5 liners. A lot of people use 5 liners, and then that's very different. That affects pigments. And influences, pigment heals and fades very differently than the single. And then you have, the larger shader needles and even mags, which very uniquely in its own right affects and influences the way pigment heals and the way pigment ages. So you have those different variances. And then on top of that, throw in the faces, the skin, right? All the different skin we work on. And you'll never work on the same skin type twice the rest of your life. Right? Every single lady we work on or gentleman is completely different from the next, and we'll never work on that particular skin again, ever. So.
Yeah, and we're looking at our clients and we're trying to predict from looking at their skin, using our color theory. So, how is this going to heal? And without knowing what you're using, you just can't accurately predict.
Right. So what's your, let me ask you this. So when you say, artists should know what's in their pigments, are you more toward whether it's an iron oxide, whether it's an organic, or whether it's a hybrid? Do you also feel they should know like the CI numbers and the colorants and the base of the pigment and all that stuff, whether it's REACH compliant, non-REACH compliant, because we got that to consider now? Or do you believe artists should even go that deep and know those things about their pigments?
Firstly, with the REACH, if you're in that area and that's the legal requirement and you're expected to work under that legal requirement, then yeah, you absolutely should know.
Yeah.
The CI numbers, I think it's useful. I've got the CI numbers all written down. My students get that. The bases, I've brought this with me. This was can you see this? Oh, you can't see it. It's my CI. Oh, there you go.
I'll go.
LIC.
Yeah.
Dog-eared.
I love it. I love it.
When I went to LI, I found that very, very useful because it told me the undertones of every pigment. It also went into a lot of depth about what type of fit skin it would be good on, everything that was in the base. Again, so that as you're getting to know the pigment line, you can look at your client and, instead of just, oh, this will probably be all right, you can actually look and see what the base is and put your color theory into practice then.
Yeah, that's kind of like the Bible of LI, right? It's a lot of information. I feel today, though, I get the impression today, like a lot of young people, they don't want to take the time and read the CIC because it's a lot of written text, it's a lot of written information. It's not very visual, it's not like there's no graphics, it's not very visual. It's just a lot of really written information. And a lot of times they don't want to read it. They don't want to put the time in and actually read and study it, which, I really think they ought to and invest, and really learn, no matter what line you're using, really invest the time and learn that pigment line inside and out. So you really, really fully know it and understand it, and, what it can do and what it doesn't do. But yeah, I know we're working. Willow is working on and Olivia, they're working on like more of a visual graphic. It's a little like less text and more visual. So we kind of have both hand in hand because maybe some people do learn a little more visually, or they want something like a quick glance. Okay, Fitzpatrick here, this, and this. Rather than having to read a manual. Our CIC is almost like a manual, like a written manual.
Yeah, I loved it. I've got to be honest. I learned very well with written text. And so I just it would be out, I would get that out when I was learning everything and I would refer to it and it would just give me that confidence to go, this is a cool pigment. It's got a green and yellow base. It's good for this type of skin. And I would think good because it gave me that extra bit of security knowing that I was probably going for the right one.
Yeah, no, 100%. The thing that I found with the CI numbers is it's only been kind of recently that artists are looking at CI numbers, color index numbers, and interested in them. For years and years and years, our industry wasn't really interested in the CI numbers. They've always been available. If with LI anyway, the CI numbers have always been available because we've been testing, and following EU guidelines for over 25 years, following EU guidelines and testing according to EU over in the CTU in Germany is not new to LI. We've been doing that for 25 years. So our CI numbers have always been available, but no one really asked. No one asked. No one was interested, or they didn't know to ask. Maybe that's a better approach. But now a lot of artists are interested. But what I find happening is they'll see the CI number, they'll look it up, and they'll see that it's red. And we've been getting a lot of emails like, oh my gosh, there's red in hazelnut. Is this going to turn, So, what I want, so for all our listeners, listening today, I want them to know that there's red on just about every single pigment shade in every single line. It's like you can't create shades and tones without red. And it's not that there's red in the formula or in that particular shade. It's the type of red. It's the quality of the red, right? There's different qualities of red. There's different types of red ores, right? There's red ores that are highly intensely red that will, almost like stain the skin and hang around. They're of poor quality. They're high in magnetisms. And then there's red ores, red colorants that pigment manufacturers can purchase that are much duller in intensity and are low in magnetism and don't stain the skin. And this is what I think that the industry doesn't understand. It's like shoes or anything else. You can buy, a $20 pair of shoes and they're probably going to leave blisters all over your feet, and, in an hour. And then you can buy a high pair of quality shoes and you can wear them for a week and, they're lovely. It's the same thing with colorants, Katie. It's like not all red colorants are created equal. And I would like for, our listeners to everybody to keep that in mind.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, as I said, I've never seen reds coming back, even in the Li pigments that I know have red in them.
Are you a big modifier person? Do you modify like your colors for most of your clients, or do you do very minimal modifying?
I do it when it's needed.
Yeah.
I do it when it's needed. And I think that just comes with time and confidence and knowing who's going to pull gray.
Yeah. Right.
Otherwise, generally, I won't modify if I don't think it's necessary. I think people over modify and they are so powerful that you've just got to be careful. Yeah. But I'm glad that they're there because I do need them on some skins.
No, we definitely need the modifiers, from time to time. I modify maybe 30% of the time. Probably 70% of the time, no, I'm not modifying either. And it's like you said, it's artists, it's a big part of our training, being able to identify the skin type and classify it, whether it's going to pull cool. And if it is going to pull cool, and by pulling cool, that means adding gray to our healed results. If it's going to pull cool, how cool? Like slightly, moderately, or a lot? It's like you can't just classify it as cool. What level of coolness is it, right? So it kind of starts there, and but people are afraid of that gray result. They're scared to death of getting gray, and they're over modifying, or they're putting modifiers in their target colors on clients that absolutely don't need it. Don't need it.
I think as well, if people have been taught with other pigment lines where they do say slap 20% red in this in every single, then if they move across to Li and start doing that, that's possibly where they're getting some of these warm, long heels from.
Yeah, 100%. And the modifiers are strong. They're concentrated and they're strong. Like the rule of thumb with Li is like, it should never really compromise more than 5% of your total target color. That's like rule of thumb. I mean, and that would be on someone really super cool. That's how strong the modifiers are. I mean, you're talking pure, straight, unadulterated orange, and it's strong. Even though it's it's strong and it's powerful. So, and sometimes we don't even need an orange. I mean, sometimes you just need a warm yellow on the different skin types, rather than going straight to a powerful orange. Like a warm yellow is appropriate. That level of warmth is going to be appropriate. So, but I'm seeing some of these, oranges and reds out there on Instagram now, and I'm like, holy moly. I mean, they're making me nervous. They're making me really super nervous. Some of these really, really bright red modifiers and bright red oranges that I'm seeing. It's making me a little nervous. So I'll be curious to see how, those end up looking, down the road.
Mm-hmm. And I don't want to have to be in a position where I have to be tattooing pure orange into someone to rectify my results.
Yeah. No, 100%, and, sometimes we have to, for other people's, if we're doing gray corrections, but yeah, your own work, no. What I think all artists, right? We all want to get to that sweet spot. And that sweet spot for an artist, Katie, for me, is where our healed results, we can predict our healed results pretty accurately. And the fade, they're fading, they're healing the way we want to where we're proud, and they're fading exactly how we want to where they're proud. And of course, even with me and all amazing artists, and if you don't admit it, you're not telling the truth, all our work doesn't age and heal exactly how we want. No artist kind of reaches that level with their work because of all the variables, right? There's a lot of things we can't control. But I think your results and your aging gets a whole lot more predictable, and the off tones that we don't want to see, they become less extreme and they become minimized once you really understand technique, skin, and your pigment line.
Yeah, completely. I mean, we can't control variables. I say to my clients, if you were all pieces of paper, I can tell you what that's going to look like.
Yeah, exactly. Well, sometimes skin, like you can look at skin, and think, oh, no, I mean, she's gonna tattoo great. She's gonna take color great. She's gonna heal great. She hardly bled. She just took color, and you expect a really great heal, and she's the one that healed all blotchy, and it's like, what the hell went wrong? And then on the flip side, you can have someone that that color didn't go in well. She bled, and you're predicting in your mind, oh gosh, she's gonna heal blotchy. I know I'm gonna lose a lot of color. She's gonna need a touch up. And she's the one who heals like beautiful, just beautiful. So like with our work, we're always getting thrown curveballs and unexpected things that we have to deal with and be counteractive to,
Yeah, and that's why I do think there's a space for every kind of pigment as well, because sometimes you're going to need to adapt when a client comes in and they haven't healed that great, or they have faded quicker than you wanted to.
Yeah.
You might need something that's a little bit punchier for that client.
For sure. I think my rule of thumb, it'd be interesting to see if you agree with me. My rule of thumb, because I love both, organics and inorganics. I've been using both my whole career. I've never pitted one against the other. I've always found the value in both. And when it comes to eyebrows, I'm mostly inorganic. Like Aqua is predominantly inorganic, but we certainly have some organics in there, but it's not a true 50-50 hybrid. We put some organic yellows and some organics in there to get this balance for a particular shade, but it's definitely predominantly inorganic. And then our loaded line is organic. But I personally, my rule for myself is I won't use an organic on someone that is sun damaged, super red, super pink, super ruddy. When I look at that skin and I think she's going to pull cool, I'm not going to use something that has the potential to be very long lasting and something that has more of a carbon base. I'm going to use something not as long lasting and something that does not have a carbon base on those particular skin types. Like, what do you think about that kind of?
Exactly the same. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, you kind of vibe with me on that?
Yeah, absolutely. Because that it's that it's going to end up pulling cool. They're probably going to end up with long-lasting grayish results. So it's better to treat that person more often with something more forgiving, I think.
Yeah, I think there's some clients, yes, you want more of a fade. You want something that's going to slowly leave their skin, versus something that has the propensity to last much longer. So with that said, let me ask you about this. And I don't want that. This should not be a controversial subject. This should be an educational subject. But there are some iron oxide brands, new brands now, and in the marketing, it's stating that this particular, inorganic or iron oxide line will fade in 12 to 24 months. They're stating a time frame that this iron oxide line will leave the skin. I've never seen marketing like that before. I've never seen a pigment brand or a pigment manufacturer or a pigment chemist ever come out and state and give an exact timeline on when a pigment will leave the skin or how long a pigment will last in the skin. And before I give my kind of 2 cents on that, I want to know have you seen that first, and what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it makes me a little bit nervous because I find that hard to, how can you predict when that's going to leave the body when you have no idea of the depth and technique of every artist using it and the different variables in all the clients? If you're saying that I think for newer artists, if I was brand new, I'd be thinking, well, I'm going to use that because all my, you know, because you're nervous in the beginning. You don't want your first brows to come back and bite you in the bum 2 years later. So,
and that's probably exactly why those statements are being made, right? It's just marketing. It's just marketing. They're marketing to a particular segment of the industry because that's what you want to hear. Like there's a lot of things I want to hear, you know, and I wish were true. I wish when you looked at a color in the bottle, it healed that damn color in the bottle, you know, but you know, it doesn't because there's so many variables. So yeah, I agree with you. It's, you know, that they're saying that I think that statement's being made to go after a certain, like the newbie or somebody that's had bad results with pigments lasting too long, you know, now, you know, promoting a line, an iron oxide line as, well, don't worry, this will only stay in the skin 12 to 24 months. You know, it's, it makes me really, really uncomfortable.
But if you tell your clients, oh, this pigment, look, it says it leaves the skin 12 to 24 months. What if it doesn't on that client? And then you yourself are open to, you know, some comeback on that.
Yeah. You know, I talked to a couple of chemists and both of them were independent chemists. You know, not Li chemists. You know, I have a really great relationship with two other pigment chemists that are completely, you know, no association to Li, and it was really interesting talking to them. That you're right. Even if it's an inorganic line, and even if it's formulated to be very weak, like a low pigment load, you cannot determine when that will leave the skin, how long it will stay in the skin. You cannot dictate or determine the timeline of that pigment in that skin. So yeah, it makes me really, really uncomfortable. And I think, you know, I hope people recognize that. There's no way for anybody, even the smartest pigment chemists, you know, to determine, you know, that sort of, you know, thing. It's,
yeah, it's difficult, very difficult. But, well, we'll see, won't we, down the line if what the results are of that. So.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I've seen iron oxides last 10 years, for Pete's sake. Do you know? 100%. And, you know, so, you know, and I think that's the misconception, too, between organics and iron oxides. I think people think iron oxides are weak and organics, minerals are weak, and organics are much stronger. And that's really not the case. If you talk to pigment chemists that really understand pigments, that's not the case, right? And they'll correct you and they'll say, no. It's not that organics are stronger and inorganics are weaker. Inorganics are more muted in tone. Organics are brighter in tone. What makes the organics like last long? Pigment load, the concentration levels, and if there's carbon thrown in there, right? Mm-hmm. So it's not necessarily iron oxide, you know, versus organics, and one's weak, one's strong. So, you know, that's also like a misconception. I mean, there's inorganic eyebrow pigments that have been on people's faces for years and years and years, you know, and they've lasted a good long time. And then there's organic pigments that, you know, have faded the skin in 2 years. So it's not this, you know, one size fits all. It's like you said, there's just so many different variables to every single thing we do. And, you know,
we're just best guessing, aren't we? We're using our education and our sort of experience and color theory and knowledge.
Yeah.
An educated best guess.
Yeah. Hey, man, I'm just along for the ride. I'm just along for the ride and waiting for the end of the movie, waiting for the end of the show, to see what happens. That's me. So, but I got to tell you, I was super stoked I've been a little depressed all week, so I was super stoked to talk to you because, Ted Lasso, I watched my last episode of Ted Lasso. So I've been super sad. I've been coming into work every day telling well, Ted Lasso, no Ted Lasso. What am I going to do without Ted Lasso in my life?
You need something new.
I know, I do. I'm watching Dave now. I'm watching Dave. And I like, oh God. Okay, you got to watch Dave then. Dave's good. If you like Ted Lasso, I think you'll like Dave. It's good. But anyway. Okay, so let me ask you this. So it's important for artists, we all agree, I think most people agree, it's important for artists to understand organics versus inorganics versus hybrids and what each one does, the pros and the cons of each one, right? Because, or maybe not even pros and cons, but maybe how each one performs or doesn't perform in all these different scenarios. Do you think it's important to educate the client? Do you educate the client or you just pick one, put it on them, and you know best? The client doesn't need to know. Or are you the type of artist that, no, you tell the client the difference and why you're picking that? You do.
Yeah, I do, because I think that it's informed consent. And for it to be informed consent, they kind of need to know what I'm doing. I do understand that most people think it's eyebrows and that girl down the road does eyebrows and there's the other girl and she does eyebrows and it's all the same. And actually we can be using very different pigments, very different techniques that are going to heal differently and last differently. Yeah. So I'll usually will tell them, if someone's coming to me for very natural results and she's a more mature lady with thinner skin, then I'm going to go in organic and I may even dilute it as well. And I'll generally talk them through this because if that's what they want and they're a little scared of something being too bold and punchy, I'm going to talk them through my choice so that they know that I'm educated in it, because we can always go bolder down the line.
Yeah, no, I'm the same way. I talk to my client a lot too. And even while I'm tattooing them, I talk. Like I'll tell if their skin's bleeding, I'll kind of tell them, oh, your skin's bleeding on me. Or if I get a little area where it's not taking color, I'm like, oh man, I can't, this spot's not taking good for me. And I'm going to put a little numbing. I talk out loud while I'm working on my client. And I always have, and I don't even know if it's intentional, but it's become very valuable. So that way they don't expect magic from us. I think it's really good for the client to understand what their skin is doing in that moment while we're working on it, whether it's being resistant or being challenging, and those sort of things. So they don't expect magic, because I think a lot of clients, they're looking at Instagram, which is highly edited, it's fixed, it's not real, they're all fresh procedures, and I think they're and we're paying the price for that. I think these clients are coming in and they're expecting their brows to heal how these edited brow pictures look on Instagram, and I'm like, no, that's not real. It's not real. So I do agree with you. I think it's important to educate them and talk to them and get their expectations more realistic, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And talk about the difference between makeup and permanent makeup. And, it is going to look like it's a little bit of like stocking over it or something. It's not going to stay fresh looking like that. And actually educating them on what they're going to heal like. And certainly if the skin's not, bleeding, I will talk them through it as well, because I think that helps also manage their expectations if it's been difficult, because if it is going to be a little bit blotchy, as you said, you'll know that we did have a bit of a hard time. Yeah. And we still get clients like that. With all the preparation in the world, you're still going to get people who bleed or are really lymphy.
Oh, of course. And I think there's more of that type, that challenging, resistant, difficult skin type more now in my career than ever before, the last 5 years or so. When I first started, it just seemed like there was less of it. And it seems like now there's more difficult, challenging skin. And I'm not really sure what caused that evolution. I'm not sure if it's we're more stressed out now, because stress can cause, stuff with our skin and our whatnot, our health. Everything affects our facial skin, right? Everything. Our medicines, our mental health, our physical health, the outside elements, everything affects our facial skin. It could be more Botox, more fillers, more peels, more aesthetic things that we're doing. And women aren't waiting until they're 40 and 50 years old to do those cosmetic, enhancing procedures anymore. I mean, they're doing them at 20 now, and even younger in some cases. So I have definitely seen, I don't know if you've been in the industry long enough to see that evolution of, more skin getting more challenging. But, I certainly have, and a lot of people that have been tattooing as long as I have, we've all kind of seen that. We're dealing with just more difficult skin nowadays than we ever have before.
And sometimes people are difficult one time and not another time. Personally, my friend does my brows, and I had an ombre with a 1RL beautifully pixeled one time. The second time it needed a 7 Magnum because I was bleeding so much. And you're like, huh?
Right? It's like, yeah, right. I know. It's like, yeah, no, 100%. Yeah. And I'm wondering, like, sometimes when I'll first tattoo a client, if like their skin's like gets super hot and red and lymphy and awful, like, at their touch-up, it tattoos much better. And I'm wondering if we toughened up the skin a little bit on that first session, right? It's like toughened up the skin a little bit. And so for the second session, it's not as, it's not as wimpy, it's a little tougher, and it can kind of take the procedure like a little bit better. So I have noticed that. Yeah,
me too.
As well as you. So let's talk about like migration. I think that's an interesting subject because with these new EU REACH laws, now eyeliner pigments cannot be 100% inorganic. To meet the new EU REACH guidelines, be REACH compliant, there has to be carbon in your eyeliner pigments. And that broke my heart. I mean, that devastated me to hear that. And I am super nervous for all these newbies, all these artists still struggling with their depth, to have to now be forced to have to use an eyeliner pigment that contains carbon. I'm wondering what you're over there in that area of the world. What are your thoughts on that? Are the technicians over there talking about that particular situation?
Not that I've heard. I'm hearing people talk about it with the brow products, and that brows generally now have to be a hybrid for the new sort of REACH lines coming out. I've not heard people talk about eyeliner so much, and that bothers me because yourself the risk of migration.
Yeah.
With carbons and people coming in with really veiny eyelids, and if you don't have your depth right, because it is something that is so easy to get wrong, it's so easy to blow out on an eyelid. And if you're using heavy carbons, or even if you get your implantation just right, if you're using these really highly pigmented carbon results, it can blur, it can travel.
Oh, 100%. Yeah, 100%. You could be a great skilled artist and be perfect technique and just have a capillary or a blood vessel on that eyelid, and that carbon can, catch it and just travel, run, blow right up. Yeah. Well, I get made fun of. It was Victoria Glam that kind of got, flat Teryn, because I always say, carbon has feet, it can run. And then of course at the AAM, I had flat Teryn there. And she got behind of us and made fun of, mimicked me a little bit, but I thought it was really super cute. But it's true. It's really, really true. You don't necessarily have to go too deep for a carbon based eyeliner pigment to migrate or to blow out. I mean, there's lots of different variables that can cause that, even with a very skilled artist, so Yeah, I was just wondering if you guys were talking about that and if you guys were nervous and what your thoughts, were on that.
Yeah, I've not heard that much talk about the eyeliner, or if people even know that this is going to be a thing that pure iron oxide is not going to be, because onyx is what, that's the stable one.
Yeah, it is, and I think the misconception with, okay, so let's talk about eyeliner pigments for a second. So black iron oxide, onyx, Li's onyx is, black iron oxide, and it's multiple black iron oxides, like the best black iron oxides, mix them together, fused them in the base. It's a great black inorganic, eyeliner pigment. And then you have black carbon. But the myth is iron oxide, eyeliner pigments, you can't implant them. They're hard to implant. The particle size is huge. They don't heal black. They don't last. And all that, I've been using iron onyx for about 15 years, Katie. And I know a ton of eyeliner artists that uses onyx. And it implants really super good. Not on every skin type. I don't think it's the pigment, it's the skin type. Because to be super honest, I have certainly had eyeliner clients where, yeah, onyx is not implanting well. But on the next 25 eyeliner clients, onyx implants super quick, super easy. So for me, it's client dependent, not pigment dependent. And onyx heals really super black for me on a lot of clients, and on some clients it heals more of like a charcoaly black. Not all clients are going to heal black. So it's skin dependent rather than pigment dependent. But I think a lot of artists are missing out on a great iron oxide black because they'll read a post somewhere that, black iron oxide doesn't implant good and it's too big, and because it's like I don't think that's true necessarily.
Yeah, I have those same variables with carbon anyway. That sometimes it's hard to implant and sometimes it doesn't heal black, and I think it absolutely is client dependent.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that. I wanted to say that too. On the flip side with carbon, I've had clients where I cannot get that carbon in. I've had carbon fall out during the healing process, just like I've had iron oxide black fall out during the healing process. I've had carbon, fade off in a year and completely leave the eyelid in a year, where it's not really, it's not really iron oxide versus carbon when it comes to eyeliner pigments. It's that particular client. Everything is so dependent on that particular client, the skin, and our techniques versus the pigment. Pigment, yes, it's that third factor that plays a role, but we got to keep in mind it's the skin, it's ourselves, our technique, and the pigment. It's all three. And I too many times I see them only focusing on the pigment, only blaming the pigment, or feeling it's the pigment. It's a pigment issue.
Well, we don't like to say it's our technique, do we? We don't want to point the finger and go, maybe I'm just not implanting it properly.
No, for some reason, we humans, we don't like to do that, especially in our industry. And I don't know, I'm the first one to take a look at my own self. Do you know? I just am. I mean, I look at everything. I look at everything. I'm certainly going to look at my own techniques and my own self, and figure out if it's me. I mean, that's the first thing I want to know. Is it me? Is there something I'm doing wrong? Is there something I can do better? But I'm like that in every aspect of my life, and then of course I'm going to look at all the other factors. I'm going to look at the pigment. I'm going to look at the skin, but I'm certainly going to turn attention to my own self and my own technique as well. Because it's man, because those are the three stars that have to align for us to have good results. We got to have that skin, the pigment, and the technique. When all three of those align perfectly, it's like, magic. That's what we want. And when one's missing, then we're not getting the results we want, or that we could have gotten. It's like all three of those need to be there. They need to be in alignment with each other. So 100%.
Yeah, but I do think that that is just equally for carbon or iron oxide. So I think people discounting iron oxide for that, they're missing out on something that is going to be far safer for them, particularly in the early years.
Yeah. Well, the industry got, we were iron oxide industry for a very long time. There's always been organics around, always from the 80s, the 90s. There's always been organic eyebrow pigments and organic, pigment brands around. But organics, but then some big brands launched some organics, and organics got, a lot of exposure a few years back, and then a lot of people went towards organics. And then I think inorganics got, beaten up a little bit. And, I hate that happened. And sometimes that's a part of business. But now you see people coming back to organics and finding balance. And that's what it's all about, a balance, finding that balance. So
yeah, and I think that when you mentioned earlier that microblading came along, and I think that people went to microblading and these organics, and I've seen a lot of migration in microblading.
Oh goodness,
and you
yes.
can tell that they've been skillfully put in and beautifully put in, but it doesn't look like that in 2 years' time.
Yeah, no, 100%. I look at everything. It's easy to get upset. It's easy to get annoyed and angry and frustrated. And I just kind of look at this big, huge, eclectic industry. We're all so different. There's a lot of mistruths out there, but I just see it as an opportunity to, for artists like you and I to get together and do these sort of things. And it creates opportunity for really great education. And great education and truth in education, transparency in education does exist if the artist wants to, be educated that way, find that type of education. It does exist. So yeah, I still love this industry and everything going on, even with all the stuff that, I'm like, what?
Well, I think that's why you've always been so respected, because you kind of seem above all the, anything that's going on. So it's yeah, I think that education trumps marketing all the time as well. Real education.
Yeah.
And I think that there's such an appetite for it from other artists.
Yeah, well, it's what I love to do. It's always brought me joy. I love talking about PMU. I love talking about everything PMU. Pigments is just one subject of many that I love to talk about. I love talking about things like the, with artists like you. I even love talking with artists that have a completely different opinion than me. I think we learn more or just as much from artists that we don't agree with, that do things completely different or have a completely different philosophy and way of looking at things. I think we learn just as much, if not more, from them. And, and I think it's fantastic. So I want to thank you for coming on the podcast today. Did you have anything else that you wanted to add, Katie? Is there anything that you wanted to throw out there, or tell our listeners?
I think I'm doing 100 pieces of content on my YouTube at the moment, and one of the things I wanted to add definitely was just a little montage of all my faded LIs, just to go, look how easy my life is.
I know.
because the things that come back to me, and especially when I do see on forums people saying about the reds and the oranges and the salmons, and I'm like, this isn't happening to me.
It's not happening to most of us that use LI. It's not. It's but you do see some people saying that it's happening to them, and sometimes they're not even calling out LI. They're just saying iron oxide. Yeah. But not all iron oxide brands are created equal. Not all organic brands are created equal. There's high quality and low quality in every single product, on Earth, including, PMU products. So I would say to the listener, or, if you are using LI, or if you were using LI and you were getting consistent red or pink results, then it's not the pigment. There's something in your formula, something in your technique. And this is not to offend you or upset you or anything like that. We need to be open-minded and take a look at our own selves. And you got to be willing to hear it, because that's what creates growth in us as artists and technicians, right? There's something in your formula. There's something causing that, where it's not causing that for thousands of other artists that are using LI. Do you know?
Yeah, absolutely. Because I think all I ever wanted was great healed results, happy clients long term, and no stress. And when aged LI comes back in, it's just like, for me, it's an easy life. I've just got to top it up a bit,
I know. It is an easy life. It is. Great. Well, I'm glad you found your way to LI. I'm glad you love it. I love talking with you today. You're a wealth of knowledge. What is your YouTube channel? We'll post it in the comments so everybody can find it, because you do educational videos on your YouTube channel. And you're and I think you're a great educator, and you don't educate for marketing purposes. You educate to educate. And I really like that. And that's really rare these days. And so I really like that, Katie. You tell it like it is. So where can people find your YouTube channel?
Katie Schofield PMUA is my YouTube channel. And I try and put something out every week. And it is just coming from the kind of education that I wish I had when I was that first year, when everything's so scary. I wish I had that knowledge then.
Yeah, I know we all did, right? Me too. All right, girl. Well, thank you for spending Saturday with us, and I really appreciate that. And I hope I get to see you soon. Run into you soon.
Yeah, I hope so. I've got my eyes on Vegas.
So. Good. All right. Okay, girl. You have a good one.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thanks for joining us. Hey, everybody. Thank you. Where am I looking? Right here? Right there? All right. Thank you, everybody, for joining us today. That was Katie Schofield out of the UK. And hey, I just want to give a shout out to all our listeners. Got a great DM this morning. She wakes up and we're her morning news with her coffee. I love hearing that. I love waking up with all you guys. I love that you're following us. This podcast is growing monthly and has been every single month since we've launched. And it's all because of you guys. And from all of us here at Girlz Ink, we really certainly do appreciate it. So thank you very much. Stay in the pursuit of happiness, and we will see you next time. Cool.